5 years. 5 years in my son's house, and what do you have to show for it?
The dining table falls quiet the way a market falls quiet before rain. 12 relatives sit around the long mahogany table in the Adeyemi mansion in Lekki Phase 1, and at the head of it, Chief Deaconess Mercy Adeyemi stares at her daughter-in-law like she is something the cat dragged in.
Ma, we have been trying. Does not carry a child. Trying does not continue a bloodline. Since this woman entered this house, has anything good happened?
Efe, her son, stares at his plate. He does not lift his head. He never does. Funmi asked for one thing tonight: help from the family trust for one final round of IVF treatment. She did not expect an audience for the answer.
Ma, I only asked for help with one more round of treatment.
This trust was not built for barren women. It was built for children.
Funmi rises slowly. Every eye at the table follows her. She does not shout, she does not cry. She unscrews her wedding ring with a calm that frightens the room more than tears would have, and sets it beside Efe's untouched cup of tea.
Thank you for your time, Ma. God bless this family.
But here's the thing about silence. Sometimes it is the loudest sound in the room, because in that silence, everyone at that table heard what Funmi did not say, that this was the last insult she would ever swallow in that house. That night, she moved permanently into the hospital's executive doctor's residence. No arguments, no tears, no phone calls. But to understand how a woman walks away from a marriage on a single quiet sentence, you have to go back 12 years to a girl in a hospital library who was already being told she didn't belong in the profession she would one day master. Funmi was 22, hunched over a cardiology textbook in the library of Lekki Teaching Hospital, highlighter between her teeth, when a senior lecturer stopped at her table.
Adeyemi, cardiothoracic surgery is not a place for a woman who wants children someday. You understand this?
I understand it's a place for anyone who can hold a steady hand, sir.
But here's the thing about dreams. The people who doubt them loudest are rarely the ones who have to carry them. 5 years before the night at that dining table, Funmi married Efe Adeyemi in white, radiant, holding his hand at the reception, while Mercy leaned toward a cluster of churchwomen loud enough to be heard.
A doctor. Let us see if all that schooling can produce a grandchild for me.
Funmi heard it. She smiled anyway, because a bride does not fight on her wedding night. She did not yet know she would be fighting for the next 5 years. 2 years into the marriage, a doctor at a fertility clinic slid 2 file folders across a desk. Funmi read hers first, calm. Then Efe's. Her hand froze on the page.
Mrs. Adeyemi, your results are completely normal. The difficulty is on your husband's side.
Efe's face crumbled. He gripped the armrest like a man trying not to fall off the earth. If my mother finds out, she will never forgive me. She will say I have failed the family name. Then she will not find out from me. And that was the moment Funmi chose to carry a lie that was never hers, to protect a man who would go on to let his mother crucify her for it, meeting after meeting, Sunday after Sunday. A year later, Mercy stood at a podium in her deaconess robes, addressing rows of seated women at the church's fellowship hall, Funmi seated in the front row, hands folded tightly in her lap.
The Bible tells us a fruitful woman is a crown to her husband.
Laughter, quiet and cruel, rippled through the hall. Funmi kept her spine straight. She had learned how to bleed without anyone seeing the wound. 8 months before the night of everything ended, she reheated a plate of rice at midnight, still in her work blazer, when Mercy appeared in the kitchen doorway, arms folded, robes cinched tight.
Is this what doctors do?
Ma, I was in surgery.
A woman's life was. I don't want to hear about strangers. I don't want to hear about strangers' lives.
My grandchildren's lives. When am I hearing about that? Funmi said nothing. she has learned that some nights silence is cheaper than an argument she cannot win. She ate her cold rice standing at the counter, alone, the way she has learned to eat most things in that house, alone and quickly, before anyone can take it from her too. What the Adeyemi family never knew is that outside those walls, Funmi lived an entirely different life. At Lekki Private Hospital, nurses called her by a name that wasn't Adeyemi at all.
Dr. Coker, the board wants you as lead for the Category 1 transplant list.
Thank the board for me. Outside these walls, she was a legend with a 9-hour surgical record no one else had matched. Inside her mother-in-law's house, she was the dry tree. This was her lowest point. Not because she had nothing, but because the two halves of her life could never sit at the same table. Until the night of the dining room, when she finally decided they didn't have to. 3 weeks after Funmi left, she unpacked a single suitcase in the small, spare apartment at the hospital's doctor's residence. Her phone buzzed. Efe, calling for the 9th time. She silenced it and set it face down. No more discussions, she said. Fine, no more discussions. And honestly, walking away from that dining table wasn't the end of Funmi's story. It was the first page of the only chapter she'd ever written for herself. Days later, the hospital's chief medical director slid a promotion letter across his desk. Dr. Coker, the board wants you as head of cardiothoracic surgery, effective immediately. Thank you, sir. I won't disappoint the unit. A new title, a new floor, a new corner office with her real name engraved on the door. Professor Dr. Funmilayo Coker. But here's the thing about power quietly earned. The people who denied you never see it coming because they never bothered to look. Back at the mansion, a family lawyer read from a paper while Efe paced and Mercy sat stiffly, arms folded. She has filed for a legal separation, ma. She is requesting nothing from the estate, not one kobo. Good riddance. Let her go and be a career woman somewhere. This family will survive without her. But Mercy's voice was not as steady as her words, because word had already begun to travel. Quiet whispers from church members who worked at the city's top hospitals. Whispers Mercy hadn't yet annexed to her own daughter-in-law. That Sunday, greeting congregants at the chapel door with practiced warmth, a church sister leaned in with concern. Ma, is it true your former daughter-in-law is that big surgeon everyone is talking about? The one on the hospital billboard on Admiralty Way? Funmi? No, you are mistaking her for someone else. My son's wife could barely manage a pregnancy, talk less of a scalpel. Mercy said it with such confidence that even she almost believed it. She had spent 5 years deciding who Funmi was. It never once occurred to her that she might have been wrong. That same week, at the mansion, Efe sat with 2 church elders scrolling through comments on a gossip blog that had picked up the hospital billboard story. Efe, is it true this Dr. Coker is your wife? The whole church is asking. No, Funmi left because she wanted her freedom. She was never satisfied being just a wife. This surgeon story is something else. It was a small lie, but small lies, like small fires, do not stay small for long, especially not in a city where everybody's cousin works at a hospital. Word reached Funmi within the week, the way word always does. She read the message once, set the phone down, and returned to her ward rounds without a single wasted breath. A colleague, Dr. Ngozi, found her in the staff cafeteria later, a cup of tea going cold front of her. Funmi, they are saying you walked out on your marriage because of pride. Funmi, why haven't you said anything? Because the truth doesn't need my permission to eventually stand up, Ngozi. It only needs time. Something in her had shifted. She was no longer waiting to be believed. She was simply waiting to be seen. It happened on a Sunday, mid-sermon, Mercy radiant at the pulpit, arms raised in thanksgiving. Suddenly she stumbled. Her hand flew to her chest. Gasps rippled through the congregation as she collapsed at the altar. "Deaconess, somebody call an ambulance!" And just like that, the woman who denied a dry tree the money for a simple IVF cycle now needed millions to survive the night. At the hospital's emergency wing, Mercy was wheeled in on a gunny, pale, an oxygen mask over her face, Efe running alongside, gripping her hand. Massive cardiac event, she needs an emergency minimally invasive bypass. There is only one surgeon in West Africa qualified to perform it at this survival rate. Then call them. Call anybody. Money is not a problem. But here's the thing about money. It can buy an operation theater, a team, even a miracle drug. It cannot buy the one thing the Adeyemi family had spent 5 years throwing away, the surgeon herself. Within the hour, the family trust, the very trust that had refused Funmi's IVF request, authorized an emergency surgical deposit. Whatever it costs, just save her. Nobody in that room noticed the irony yet. That would come later, and it would come all at once. Weak on the gurney outside the operating theater, Mercy insisted on meeting the surgeon before she was wheeled in.
Let me see the doctor's face. Let me thank the one who will save my life. The double doors parted. A line of surgeons walked through in green scrubs and masks. At the front, the lead consultant slowed her steps, lowered her mask, removed her cap. Her locks fell loose around her face. Silence. The kind of silence that has weight, that presses on the chest harder than any illness. Mercy. Funmi, what are you doing here? Are you now working as a nurse in this place? CMD. Nurse? Ma, allow me to properly introduce your surgeon. This is Professor Dr. Funmilayo Coker, head of cardiothoracic surgery and the only physician in this country qualified to perform tonight's procedure. Without her in that theater tonight, ma, you have less than 2 hours to live. And in that corridor, everything Mercy Adeyemi had ever said about career women who spend all day pretending to be important came rushing back to sit on her chest like a second illness. 12 hours condensed into a single held breath. Steady hands, beeping monitors, low urgent voices, Funmi's unwavering focus. Funmi, steady. We don't rush a heart, we convince it to keep going. 12 hours later, the monitor holds a steady rhythm. Funmi steps back from the table, peels off her gloves and says nothing. She does not wait for applause. She walks out before the room can even begin to clap. Days later, in the private suite, Mercy sits propped up in bed, weak but conscious. Funmi enters, not in scrubs this time, but in her white consultant's coat, her name embroidered clearly on the breast pocket. Funmi, you wanted to thank the doctor who saved your life, ma. Here I am. She sets 2 envelopes on the bedside table, one after the other, with the same calm she once used to remove a wedding ring. Funmi, the first is the hospital's final invoice, paid in full by your own trust, the one that told me word for word that this trust was not charity for a dry tree. The second is the separation paperwork Efe has been refusing to sign. Mercy's mouth opens, but for the first time in 5 years, no cruel sentence arrives. Funmi, one more thing, ma, before I go. She places a slim medical file on top of the envelopes. Funmi, that is Efe's fertility file from 4 years ago. I carried the blame for something that was never mine to carry because I did not want to shame your son in front of you. I am done carrying it. Efe, standing in the doorway, sinks slowly into the chair beside his mother's bed. He does not defend himself. There is nothing left to defend. Efe, Funmi, I'm sorry. I should have said something a long time ago. But here is the thing about sorry. It arrives easiest right after the truth has already done all the hard work. Mercy, Funmi, I didn't know. I called you a barren tree, and you were the one holding the roots of this whole family together. Funmi looked at her, not with hatred, not even with triumph, just with the tired peace of a woman who has finally put a 5-year weight down. Funmi, you didn't know, ma, because you never once asked, you only accused. She turned and walked out, leaving mother and son alone with the silence they had built together. Stage 7. The closing. News spread through the church and the family's social circle within weeks. The barren daughter-in-law they mocked at every gathering was the surgeon whose hand saved the deaconess's life. Doctors and nurses nod respectfully as Funmi passed them in the corridor now. Efe sends messages asking for a second chance. Funmi does not block him. She simply does not answer. Some doors close not with anger, but with the quiet finality of a woman who has already found her peace on the other side of them. On an evening weeks later, Funmi stands alone at a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking Lagos, buttoning her white coat as the city lights begin to flicker on below her. They called me Barren, not knowing these hands were saving lives every single day. But here is the thing about people who measure your worth by what you haven't given them. They will never think to ask what you've already been carrying. Funmi did not need an apology to be whole. She only needed the truth to finally stand where the lies used to sit. So, let me ask you this before you go. If the people who doubted you could see everything you carry in silence, would they even recognize you? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to know what you would have done.